Good morning. Happy Easter and welcome to the Science of Mind class here at CSLDallas. I'm Dr. Petra. And it is a fabulous morning to be celebrating and to continue to dive into our chapter called Body. That aspect of the infinite reality that is tangible, that is the physical creation. Everything from the Big Bang to the ultimate reaches of the universe, to microscopic subatomic particles and waves, all the way out to the biggest, I don't know what, black holes or giant stars that you can imagine. All of it, everything is included in this thing called the physical universe, or using the term body. I'm sure there's lots of other terms that could have been picked, but this is the one that was picked. We also synonymously use the term effect or form to identify this part of the whole, right? Because remember, it's a whole. We believe that this is one infinite whole, and that there is the intangible aspect of it and the tangible aspect of it. There's the causal aspect of it and the effect aspect of it. And understanding all of that allows us to take that spiritual view of the universe as opposed to a purely conditional view based on circumstances or conditions. So we're on page 100, and I think we touched on this at the end of last week's class, that which changes. We've learned that spirit is the absolute being, and it is the only thing in the universe with self-knowing, a knowingness and volition and choice, right? And that is true whether we're talking about the macrocosm, that which we often refer to as God or the divine or love, the presence, the I am that I am. All of that is sort of encompassed in this idea of absolute being. And then we have the soul, which we just finished, the whole chapter on the soul, which is the servant of spirit. And it has no choice and no purpose other than to create or produce that which spirit intends, that impulse of life itself. And then and then comes that which is created, the effect of the cause. So the cause, and then there's the process by which a cause becomes a reality, and the physical forms, the outpicturings, the experiences, all of that falls under this giant term, body. And the thing about body, the thing about this physical universe, unlike absolute being, is that it's constantly changing, right? It's based on the pairs of opposites. The Hindus talk about the fabric of reality, the nature of creation is the pairs of opposites. We understand it from a scientific point of view. The space-time continuum, right, gives us an axis that we then can plot everything on. It either has form, it either has extension or duration. Space is extension, time is duration. And the minute you have something that has space or time, extension or duration, you have an effect. Only that which doesn't have extension or doesn't have time is causal or is part of the creative process, the law that moves cause to effect or to become effect. And so and this is, I continually think about this phrase that we use in the science of mind, dual unity, right? This is the dual unity, that we have that which is changeless expressing itself through that which is constantly changing. And so creation is eternally going on. And so since spirit must be manifest in order to be conscious, there must be a way in which it manifests, and there must be a manifestation, right? The way in which it manifests is the law, the creative process. It falls under the rubric of the word soul, and what is manifested falls under the rubric that we use the term body for. Okay, so now this next part, from form within the formless. So this is a really important aspect of understanding the nature of creation. But we have to always realize that when we're reading metaphysicians that were writing in the early 1900s or the late 1800s, they did not have the same scientific understanding of physicality as we do today. So you see references to ether, which the loosely, I guess most loosely equated with today dark matter, or even the quantum field, right? They were trying to get a hold of what is everything made out of, and what is left over, what's between the things that are made, right? What is in this space right here, it's clearly not a vacuum, or even the space out in space before people were going out in space. So it's always an interesting thing to realize that this is one of the places where the science of mind is open at the top, is to keep exploring the scientific revelations that help us think about how this manifest body works, is operating, and whether or not it still makes sense in the way in which we think about the universe and we think about the whole, or does it in fact change something about how we think about the whole? So it's an interesting conundrum, on the one hand, to read, especially when you know the science is faulty. On the other hand, to maybe read and try to imagine, well, if this were being written today, what would be used to explore or explain the same kinds of ideas? And then, does it continue to make sense? Does it continue to fall together? So here we have in the idea that the physical body is like every other physical manifestation. It's an image derived from ideas. The form is a manifestation from the substance of all forms. The form, the particular thing, the cup, the book, the chair, is a manifestation from the substance of all forms. All bodies are made out of the same stuff. The one stuff is an inanimate and infinite stuff and is equally distributed in the universe. Okay, so we have to go all the way back to the Greek pre-Socratic philosophers. The first time that we have at least recorded in our current Western canon, probably was all much longer ago, was lost in the Alexandria fires. But the first ones that we really are recorded are the pre-Socratic philosophers. And this is where the beginning of the split of oneness and particularization happens. And there's a particular philosopher, Bobby's already given me the name once, and I've forgotten it already. I know it begins with a D, and I know it's not Dionysus. That's a Roman god. And he actually started with the word atom, doing a mental, what would we call a thought experiment. Like, what's the building block from which everything is made? And because it's physical, the assumption was it was something tangible. And so we still use that term today, atom. And there were other philosophers who were like, no, this is all part of some one infinite experience, and somehow we're experiencing it. We're the ones who are making it into things. And this was the what should we say, the denouement of that argument was really the Platonic versus Aristotelian argument, and we're still doing it today, whether it's consciousness or whether it's materiality. But because the conundrum is, how does a oneness become multiplicity? right? How does a oneness take form? If it's all one, what is it making itself out of, and why does it appear to be separate? And so here, the postulation, because clearly this is a thought experiment. This is a way of explaining, describing reality, and of course we have to see if it fits our experience and if it fits how we understand co-creation, creation to happen. So there's one infinite stuff that is inanimate. And he says, much like the modern idea of ether, of space, it is this nature of this stuff to take form. Now, notice that there's no scientific word. Elsewhere, Ernest Holmes calls it soul stuff. It's a very technical term because, of course, not knowing, not sure what it is. And we've seen in the last 150 years, we've seen the idea of the atom, like the Tinker Toys that we learned in school way back when, have turned into spheres of probability. We've gone all the way down to photons of light as the actual building block, if you will, which actually aren't a thing at all, but are packets of information. Like, that isn't just blowing your mind, how a photon of light can be a packet of information. And even beyond that is the whole nature of the quantum field, right? That there's the quantum field, or the quantum reality, it's either a wave or a particle, and they've now realized that it's not an either or, it's a both and. So now they call it a wave particle. Sometimes it's a wave, sometimes it's a particle. And when it's a wave, it appears, it's the closest analogy we have, or the closest current understanding that we have of this inanimate and infinite stuff that is everywhere present, that takes form. And how does it take form? Is by particularizing. Every time an electron particularizes in a certain place, or a subatomic particle particularizes in a certain place, and it's taking form, then this inanimate stuff that isn't anything in particular yet particularizes and takes form. Therefore, form is entirely in the realm of effect. Form comes and goes, but it is not self-knowing. Therefore, form is within the formless. So these two things are co-eternal, co-arising. They are, they're not mutually exclusive. I love what goes on to say. Form is not an illusion, even when it is the form of disease. It's not an illusion. It there represents a false consciousness, but it is real. It's the this becomes like sort of the end of the argument here. If the formless did not take form, spirit would never arrive at self-realization. So the very act of creation and expressing itself in form is the way in which the infinite becomes self-aware. It becomes self-realized. And goes on to say, it's in the next chapter, the next little section. Without it, form is real as form, but it is not self-conscious. It is constantly the idea that spirit would never arrive at its own self-realization without this movement into form. But form itself is not absolute. And so it's constantly changing. In the Tao Te Ching, there's a verse number 42 tries to get a hold of this, where this how does unity become multiplicity? And we're actually going to read a couple of places as we go along, whole sections where the science of mind is struggling with this idea, try to give it some language. And I mean, the Tao Te Ching is much, 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 much older and is working with the same question. And so the verse goes, and the one begot the two, and the two begot the three, and the three begot the 10,000 things. Right? The 10,000 things obviously representing multiplicity. Right? The one being the oneness. We would maybe translate the two into love and law, principle and presence. The three, spirit, soul, and body, the creative process. And out of that comes 1,000 things, this need or desire for being to become, for the absolute to express in what we call the relative. Again, the question would be, why do we spend time talking about this? Why would this be important? Why do we want to really grapple with this concept? And so let's ask that question and see what you think. So we're going to say good morning to Ryan and good morning to all of you out there and see what's going on.
Hey, Dr. Petra, good morning, and good morning to everybody here in the room on campus with us, and all the folks who are joining us online all over the world on Facebook and on Zoom. Good morning to you too, and we love and appreciate that you're in community with us today. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to give some housekeeping rules since this is an engaging conversation. So for the folks here in the room, I'm waving my hand to those who will be on camera today. I'm waving my hand to those who will not be on camera today. The funny thing, too, we had a party in here, so the chairs are all messed up. And we have a very small section over here today. I know you guys can't see that online, but it's hysterical to me. And then also, for anybody who would like to ask a question here in the room, feel free to raise your hand. And the wonderful, magnificent Richard and volunteers will help pass the microphone around. So make a friend today, raise your hand.
Yes.
And for all the folks who are joining us on Zoom, you can hit the raise your hand icon located down in your reactions below, and I can go ahead and bring you into the room, and or leave a question inside of the comments, and I can say that aloud. And the same goes true for those who are joining us on Facebook Live. Feel free to put your question and comment in the chat, and I'll bring that into the room as well. So just want to poll the audience here inside this room. Anybody have any thoughts, questions?
We have stunned them into,
right.
No, I was going to say, too. Here we go. Great.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm not quite, it said the spirit must be manifest in order to be conscious. So that means that all of those, the early stages before something is created, is not a conscious, there's no consciousness involved in that, in the creation itself, or the oneness.
Well,
before.
And so of course the problem is that we use the same term to mean many different things, right? And so there's a little bit more of a definition, I think, in self-realization than in conscious. So I would put the term self-conscious in there. Because we know it's all consciousness. So everything has its intelligence, everything has a certain level of consciousness, but we do not ascribe self-consciousness to it. The self-consciousness being able to inquire into the truth of things, inquire into what's going on, to become self-aware. And so I will give you the philosophical argument. This is, again, it's a purely philosophical argument, which then has to be corroborated through our mystical and intuitive experiences and our own deep thinking about it. But the philosophical argument goes like this. If you can imagine a oneness that has no other, so, right, it's hard to bend our minds around that because we're really imagining an infinity. So usually we imagine a oneness as a circle and we think, oh, there's inside the circle and outside the circle. But you have to imagine that there is actually no edge. And everything is one. It's one thing. So if everything is one thing, how does it know that it is a self? Well, you only know that it's a self because there's something that's not a self. Right? And we see this in the development, we fundamentally see this in the development of children, in the development of actually almost any animal that begins to separate itself from its family, its parents, right? But that notion of pure being doesn't actually allow for the ability to know itself because there is no other. So it actually requires separation. It requires an other for a self to know itself. And so it's interesting to notice that even with animals, some animals, they begin to get a sense of it, but only because there's a mirror put up there, right? But in the milieu of their normal lives, there's no sense of self and other. And so the requirement for physicality and expression is all of these multiplicity of things so that consciousness can evolve an organ into which consciousness can finally reveal itself to itself. And so are human beings the only place where this has happened? That is so minusculely unlikely if we think of an infinite universe, right? Who knows? Other things on this planet, other planets, other multiverses. But there is a sense that we have become an organ for consciousness to be able to inquire into itself. Without the sense of separation, that is actually not possible. So that's how the thought experiment goes. It's based on evolution and the developmental process that really has been discovered since the recognition of evolution. And so that's why the understanding, and also comes not just out of New Thought, comes out of the Eastern traditions. This is very much the way the Hindus, a lot of what we pull from Hinduism is that this sense of separation is required for the spirit to have an experience and to discover its self-realization. So these are the things that I contemplate for long periods of time. Because I have to think about and explore and examine, does that line of reasoning make sense to me? And you have to do the same, right? Now, it doesn't say that the infinite, that spirit, that aspect of the one isn't self-knowing, because it knows what the desire, but the self-realization and self-consciousness is something beyond that. And so when we say God is self-aware, we have to remember that when we use the term God, we're actually including spirit, soul, and body. And I would personally argue God is self-aware because we bring that to the table. Again, not just human beings, but any place where self-awareness is being woken up. Let's just have that constantly as the add-on. But we're sitting in this room as human beings, so we're the ones who are exploring this conversation right now. And so when we say that consciousness is conscious, there's a mechanism through which consciousness reveals itself to itself, and it becomes conscious of itself. And that mechanism is the multiplicity of creation. That's what I have to say about that. And it's a great question, but this is what I'm saying. Sometimes we don't realize that the science of mind has entered into a 5,000 to 8,000 year old exploration that humanity has been doing and having with itself, probably older in the East, 10,000, 15,000 year old exploration of these questions. And we're constantly have been exploring it which is why we have various strains of philosophy, various strains of religion. Everybody takes a different starting point. Everybody takes a different take on it, right? And so then, you know, a big piece of it in the Western culture is the Aristotelian and Platonic split. And Plato says, well, this is all an outpicturing of the one, the ideal. And Aristotle's point of view primarily is, no, this is all matter, and it is what it is to us because of our experience of it. And science of mind would say, actually, both of those things are simultaneously true. And there's this constant need for it's to be either or. And there's so many ways in which either or becomes this nature versus nurture. There's so many ways in which we play this either or game. And science of mind understands it constantly resolves itself into both and. It depends on where we're standing, how we're talking about it, what we're thinking about it, and what most appropriately applies to what's going on. But we think this is just somehow so that we can fix our own lives or we can have a deep experience of peace. No, we are right now, today, in this conversation, we're having the same conversation that Socrates was having in Athens, that people have been having beyond just the desire to appease the spirits. The moment that we moved beyond that, we are now engaging in that conversation. And how we answer that conversation makes a difference. It makes a difference in how much efficacy we think we have, how much agency we think we have, whether or not we think only what's supposed to happen is happening, whether we think it's primarily predestined, whether it's just random, right? Whether we articulate it or not, the way in which we hold this back here in our consciousness is a fundamental foundation about how we decide about life and how we think it's going and what's really happening and whether or not anything can be changed. All of those things are actually grounded in this sometimes inarticulate idea we have about the answer to these questions. And so I just stay in the room. Don't abandon the questions. But anyway. All right, so we had another comment here. Please say your name.
My name is Ray.
Hi, Ray.
And you said something when you first started speaking, and I tried to write it down. I know I'm going to mess it up. You said changeless, constantly that changes. I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was some words that you strung together, and they just kind of,
whether they had meaning or not, we're not sure.
well, I know that they did, but sometimes this stuff, it's like I get it, but then it's like I'm trying to attach the words to it.
Yeah.
And it. Yeah,
I totally understand.
it goes away.
Yes, and there's no question about it, which is why over and over and over again I say, one, you have to look at these ideas out of the corner of your eye, right? Two, you have to let them rest in your consciousness, which is why I say I work with an idea. I'll work with an idea for a year and just keep playing around with it. What does it mean? How would I understand it? What does that look like? What does it feel like? When do I see it in action? Really? Are you kidding? What if other people, right? Just because some of these things are so hard to talk about because our language is designed to categorize, and to categorize it has to separate, right? And we have fundamentally only our ability to describe things in the space-time continuum, language that has allowed us to do that, which we're now using the same thing to try to describe something that is beyond the space-time continuum. So we end up with references to space and time, which are ludicrous. And yet, right, so it makes sense that it gets very slippery. Form is within the formless, it says in here. right? And the idea that we have the changing, absolute, changeless, absolute being that is forever expressing itself in the constantly changing forms. So I will tell you that one of the most profound additions to my spiritual mind treatments in the last 5 years has been to really work with the idea that being becomes. Being is forever becoming. And we want to make those two things separate. It's either being or it's becoming. But being is forever becoming. Being becomes. That is the oneness. That being becomes. So another really fun thought experiment is to take a coin in your mind and start shaving off the head. If you shave off the head of a penny, do you still have two sides of a coin? Yes. If you shave it off again, and you shave it off again, and you shave it off again, you could have a thin wafer of these smallest subatomic particles, and you will still have two sides, right? And it's sort of like that. You can't have being without becoming, and you can't have becoming without being. Otherwise, becoming is purely random. And if you have being without becoming, then you have isness, and this is all an illusion. And there's really no point to it anyway. All we're trying to do is get away from it. Get out of it, which seems like a complete waste of time and space. And so clearly this has a purpose. This has a reason. This is, and if we go back to the Hebrews, the Hebraic Genesis stories, it's good. It's ultimately originally blessed, thanks to Matthew Fox. And so if it's originally blessed, it must therefore have purpose and meaning, right? And so we have to struggle with what is its meaning and purpose. And, right, and I just, okay. So we have a comment right here.
Like, what's the point? Oh, sorry about that. Hi, my name's Carol. Can you actually hear through
No,
this?
it's just for them.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just for the people online.
Thank you. So my name is Carol, and you just answered the question like, so what? What is the value of knowing this?
Right, that is the question.
For you.
What is the value of knowing this? Well, I'm asking you that question.
Okay, so I'm typically think of it as source, as causal. Spirit is causal. So it's the oneness out of which everything emerges. And the manifestation, because I think of it as a triune, right? So we have spirit, we have the law, then we have the result. And so I'm always looking at the causal manifesting. And so this point of view is more at, to me, seeing it, walking through life as it's all one. And so what? So what that it's all one? I really, like for the average daily experience, how does that realization or knowledge impact anything? I don't mean, it's not a cynical question, it's a real question.
No, I understand that. Well, first of all, I would turn the question on its head and say what most people do is talk about it's all one, not realizing that what is happening is what you just described. And so you can go both directions with the question, right? So my question was actually aimed the other direction, but it's fine. I'm checking my files to see where to start. These are very large questions. We could say a lot of things about them. If it's not all one, then we have to recognize that we have to ask ourselves, how do we have access to the creative process? If it's not all one, how do we have access to any energetic experience of each other? If it's not all one, then what else could it be but either mechanical or random?
And that creates the God is other kind of experience.
Or there is no God at all.
Yeah.
And it's purely materialistic. Right? Or if it's not all one from a religious point of view, well then God, somewhere the creator, has created all of this, and in many of the more Protestant Christian traditions, and then said, here you go,
Yeah.
right? And have at it. And the Jewish tradition, it's like, oh no, God is constantly, having its hand in there, shaping things and trying to help make things. But you now have to describe that relationship. So what has become clear over the last, I would say what has become more clear in science over the last 200 years, which the mystics have known in every spiritual tradition, that when you can move beyond the disparate forms, you immediately end up in the field of oneness.
Right.
Right? And so in the field of oneness explains so many phenomena that we can't understand or that we can't explain if we are in fact separate. And then from the other direction, if we believe, it's so easy to say, well, spirit is one, and then there's the law, and then there's all these results.
Yeah.
No. Oneness means the whole thing is part of it, which to me is one of the most beautiful things about the science of mind, because that means this is, in fact, the manifest body of the divine. And it has purpose. It is the place where the infinite is expressing itself. So think of spirit without form, it's just ising. So it's love, but so what? Okay, it's beauty. I can say those words, but here's beauty, there's beauty, right? Do you see? Without form, the absolute nature of the absolute is not expressed. And so that's why then it becomes important to understand that the multiplicity of things are neither separate nor an illusion. And it reclaims its beauty and its majesty, and all the Psalms that says this is for the glory of God. Do you understand that? Do you see? It's not for the glory of God because God needs praise. It's for the glory of God so we can say beauty, love, joy, peace, there, and there, and there, and there, and there. I mean, it makes me want to weep. That's why this idea that it's the oneness includes all of it becomes so critical.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anything online, Ryan, before we close?
Not that I'm seeing right now. I think a lot of the stuff we've actually covered over, and it's fun to watch Peter with the one arm doing all
That's right.
But as a reminder, I do want to let folks know, actually, Carol, who you just heard online here, is going to be hosting a class that's coming up this Monday. And it's a deep dive into the understanding of where all of this new thought has come from. So you want to go get your brain blown away by how this has actually been going on for a really long time.
Yeah.
I highly encourage you to join our class. And it's online. That's why I like to say that, because for the folks all around the globe, you can participate too.
And it really reminds us that class really reminds us that we are in an ongoing conversation and exploration. It's not like New Thought and Science of Mind just poofed out into existence because one or two people wrote a book, right? This is a participation in this deep exploration. So yeah, it's a great class, and Carol's a great teacher.
And it's just for the folks online here, that class is called From Whence We Came, and that's going to be starting on Monday as well too. And Dr. Petra, I know we're all going to be sad that you're leaving for your fun, fabulous trip. But trust me, we are going to have a really good time while you're gone. We have a lot of special guests that are going to be coming over the course of this next month. A special one's going to be coming up this weekend. It's Elaine Silver, and she's going to be having a concert slash Beatleologist workshop.
Right?
It's a pretty cool thing. So if you're a fan of the Beatles music, you definitely want to come check that out. And then I'm not going to say who, but I am going to say me is going to actually be speaking on the platform. Isn't that crazy?
I
Who
love
thought
it.
of that?
I did.
Anyways.
I thought of that.
Yeah, well, I talked to Georgianne, who's going to be my co-speaker for that wonderful day, and we're going to be talking about sustainability and the use of technology in our growth and moving forward into the future. So that's going to be coming up this month. And then lastly...
Oh, and Michael Brundy's going to be speaking on the principles, the basic principles of science of mind. So that'll be wonderful, too.
And yes, Michael Brundy is always a great person to watch speak. And then we also have Jamie Lula, who's going to be joining us at the very end of the month. And if you guys don't know who Jamie Lula is, he is a world-renowned New Thought musician. He has beautiful music, travels all over the place, and shares his gifts with everyone. So we're honored and blessed to have him here for a concert, which is going to be on the last Saturday of the month. It's the 27th. And then he'll also be here on the 28th, which he'll be doing live performing during our Sunday celebration. And then, and then an amazing forgiveness workshop that we'll be having right after the Sunday celebration, which is on the 28th. So make sure to check out the website for more information and to get your tickets now, because the price is going to go up at the door.
That's right. Don't wait.
So, there was just so much to talk
I
about. I
know.
thought I'd
Plus
take a
we-
little bit of
good.
time out and just let everybody know what's
And
going
then we
on.
have the Consciousness Raising Labyrinth on
Yep.
Earth Day, the 22nd at 7 o'clock, for those of you who are in the DFW area. And we will walk the labyrinth for our planet and to heal climate change. So all kinds of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, too, because all this month we are celebrating sustainability in Earth. We're going to have some info sessions beginning on April 14th is the first in a series of info sessions. We have a sustainability circle, which is really great. I encourage you to join, where they get together, they talk about how we can live a more sustainable life in our communities and for our personal selves. And so they'll be hosting an in-person and online info session on April 14th, which is a really great way. You're going to get a lot of great knowledge. It's hosted by Georgianne Moss and Kia Tillman. So make sure to mark
And this
your
one
calendars.
is particularly around plastic, how to reduce plastic, single-use plastic in your own life and different things like that. We've done a lot of that work at home, and we do it here at the center. Surprisingly easy to do. You just have to ferret out the kinds of stuff that you like and what and what works. Good. So we're on to our Easter celebration here shortly. I hope you have a beautiful Easter day wherever you are in the world, a beautiful Sunday. And we will look forward to seeing you at all these magnificent things, all these magnificent events during the month of April. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye for now.